All right. Hey, welcome to Hot Off the Press. Glad to have you on board, everybody. Um, if you would please like, follow, subscribe, always love, and that way you'll always get all of our greatest videos coming out. We drop a new video on various SEO, digital marketing, press releases, obviously, every Thursday. So look for those kinds of things. And today we have got I'm pretty excited about this guest because I met this guy about a month ago, a little longer than that, I guess, at a mastermind down in Florida. And this guy is like incredibly interesting. He's got a great story. But what he does is a fabulous service. And I thought would be great because we have so many agency owners that follow us and people that are building their business. And I think this would be a great opportunity. This particular gentleman is a founder and CEO of Bloom and Bloom Partners, and I'm going to bring on board Chris Martinez. Hey,
Good
Chris.
morning. Good
There he
morning.
is. Wow, dancing man as well.
Hey, you got that music cranking. I'm like, dude, it's time to party.
Yeah. Man, good to see you.
Likewise. I can't believe it has been a little over a month since
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
hanging out.
Yeah, it was like end of January, February, right? Something like that.
And end of February.
Or end of February. Yes.
No, end of
No,
March.
I don't remember.
Who
But anyway,
knows? Who
yeah.
knows?
Anyway,
Time
I'll
is a
just
myth.
say this: it was much better weather in Orlando, Florida, than it was in Cleveland, Ohio. That's all I can say. So,
We're coming off a
yeah,
nice warming streak here in San
yeah,
Diego. So
yeah. Nice.
got some good weather.
So, Chris, for those folks who may not be familiar with you, can you give some background? What is the Chris Martinez story? How are you in digital marketing and all of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff? And I want to get into Bloom and what you guys do at Bloom as well. But let's hit the background of Chris first.
Yeah, we'll start. I'm going to give you as abbreviated of a version as I can. So I started my first business a few months after my dad passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2007. My first
Mm.
business was actually a soccer magazine. So I've been playing soccer since I was 5 years old, so 40 years. And this is 2007. Major League Soccer was, I think, 12 years old at the time, and David Beckham was just coming to the Los Angeles Galaxy. It was like a huge deal, and so I decided, hey, I want to start the soccer
Wow.
magazine. And I failed miserably, lost everything, and was in a bunch of debt
Oh,
and
no.
everything. It was very, very difficult time for me, both personally, because I was dealing with the grief of my dad dying, and then starting this failed business. And so eventually I got into digital marketing because I was like, hey, like this is a couple of years after my soccer magazine launched and failed. I was like, hey, I need a website. I didn't know how to build one. And a friend of mine built a website for his girlfriend at the time. And you remember back in the day, all the WordPress websites, they had a sidebar and there was like a search box down at the bottom, and then it would say
Yeah,
powered by
yeah,
WordPress.
yeah.
So I saw that on his girlfriend's website, and I was like, I hit up my buddy Amir, and I was like, hey, what is this WordPress thing? Can you build me a website really quickly? I got this idea, And he's like, no, just learn how to do it on your own. And I remember being so angry with him. I was like, man, I'm struggling. I'm struggling. Why can't you just help me with this thing? It turned out it was the best advice ever because it forced me to learn how to go and do it on my own. And
Yeah,
so over the
yeah.
course of a weekend, I was able to build my own or my very first WordPress website. And it was ugly as sin, but I built it, right? And so that turned into me building more websites. That turned into me learning about how to drive traffic to websites. At one point in time, I hired Russell Brunson, had a coaching program back in the day called .com Secrets. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember that.
Wow.
And so I was paying one of his coaches, it was like $500 a month to teach me about how to drive traffic. And so then I ended up getting a job in digital marketing because I'm still paying off all this debt from my failed business. And so I get a job in digital marketing working for a company called Reach Local. I don't even know if they're still around,
Okay.
but think they ended up getting bought by Gannett. And so I worked for Reach Local for a year. Then that turned into me. Actually, that year that I started working with Reach Local, I started my agency. So that was 2012. Reach
Okay.
Local PPC management. They didn't do anything with websites or landing pages. And so I was like selling PPC management to these small business owners that had crappy websites. And then I would be referring them out to other people. And I was like, well, why don't I
Right,
just
right, right.
create an agency and do this myself? That started the agency. I was moonlighting for a year, and then I got another job. I was the online advertising sales manager at 2 newspapers in Los Angeles.
Huh?
And then that was a very short stint. It was only like 6 months. I hated them. They hated me. They brought me into the office. They said, we're slashing budgets. You're the last one to come in. Plus, we secretly hate you. I got let go. And I remember it was like 15 minutes of terror because I'd had that paycheck, right?
Yeah.
And then it was like clarity where it was like, I hate coming to this job. I hate all these people that I'm surrounded by. I really believe in this agency. Let's go full time in the agency. And then from that day on, I was just doing the agency full time. Fast forward, I had this team in the Philippines, by the way. That's a good an important piece of this story.
Okay.
Because in 2012, I started the agency with all the fulfillment being done in the Philippines, which, 13 years ago, that was where everybody went for talent.
Right,
Well,
right.
fast forward to 2015, and, this is 2.5, 3 years of me staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning, like every day.
Right.
And I just couldn't do that anymore. And I was like, there's got to be a better place to be able to source talent. I'm living in San Diego. I was like, I bet you I can find people down in Tijuana, Mexico. And so I set up a company in Mexico. I started finding talent in Mexico. I was one of the first people to ever source talent down in Latin America or Tijuana, agency talent, and built the business. And then from 2015 to 2017, we grew our client base from about 60 clients to over 220 clients for my agency, all on retainer. It was a lot.
Wow.
We had really, really good processes as well. And also our offer was, like, looking back, was stupid. It was a lower ticket offer. So I was of the mindset when I started that agency, we had a $30 a month package, which was crazy.
$30. What the heck
Crazy,
did you even
stupid.
do?
Well, keep in mind, this is before inflation, right? So $30 went a lot further back. No, it didn't. It did not go very far. That was dumb. That was very dumb. But so we had the smaller, like, it was a lower tier agency. So I think, eventually, before I decided, hey, I want to move on to something else, I think our highest program was maybe $1,000 a month. But we had all these clients that were in that like $100 to $500 a month range. So, like, the agency was doing revenue. It wasn't good revenue, but it was doing revenue. And we had all these clients, like hundreds of clients. And so that, there was a huge learning lesson just in that alone, like the management of all those clients. And keep in mind, I was managing this entire agency with like 8 people. So we had like 200 and something clients with just 8 people because we were so efficient. And so then in 2017, I got this idea, hey, I'm going to start an outsourcing company. Kind of after I heard about Design Pickle and what they were doing, I was like, I'm going to start this outsourcing company, helping marketing agencies to get access to talent in Mexico. And it was going to be like an all like pay one fee, and then you get unlimited support. And so I launched that outsourcing company in 2017. It was called Dude. That took off pretty quickly.
That dude. I love that dude.
I mean, being from Southern California, it's kind of like the word that you say with everything. So Dude grew very, very fast. And then we ended up having, hundreds, over 100 employees at Dude. And we were working with agencies all over the US. And that one was doing millions and millions of dollars in revenue. And so then after the pandemic, we started to recognize that our competitive advantage at Dude, which was basically being a middleman, right? So like talent in Mexico,
I love that name,
marketing
dude.
agencies, we were the middleman. And so we recognized that the competitive advantage of having a company in Mexico, being able to pay the benefits, being able to source talent, that was going away because it was a lot easier to find talent. And it was also, there were other ways that you could set up a company or go through somebody else who has a company in that country and basically like eliminate the need for us. And so we saw that coming. We also had clients that were coming to us that didn't want anything to do with the outsourcing. They just wanted us to teach them or consult with them on how to grow their agency. Things like hiring and training, building out leadership teams. Profitability was like a huge one. People would be like, hey, how do I make more money? And so we started to do that for them. And then we had a client that came to us and he's like, I'll pay you guys $5,000 a month. Just help me to run the agency better. So we were like, okay, why not? Let's try. And so eventually we recognized, okay, so the outsourcing is going away. This consulting thing is really starting to pick up steam, especially with the level of agency owners that we were talking to. You know, like they get to the $1 million, $2 million range, even beyond that. But like at $1 million plus in revenue, selling is kind of like you kind of have that down, right? You have good systems for fulfillment, but they're not necessarily scalable. And then like your lack of knowledge when it comes to running the business really starts to hurt you and hold you back. So we see agencies that were like kind of flatlining in their growth, whereas the years before, you know, it's just like hockey stick growth. And so when we were talking to that person, you know, let's just call it $1 million to 10 million, but really like $1 million to like 6 million, like they were having these consistent problems that we knew how to fix. And so we saw, okay, cool, like let's really start to help those folks. And so then this is last July, we decided, okay, cool, like we're going to do a whole rebrand. We ended up like transitioning all of our outsourcing team members to work directly with those clients and like, hey, here you go. Like you guys go have a great life together. And we rebranded the company and we what I say is dude grew up and we became Bloom. And so now we do management consulting for marketing agencies with the ultimate goal of helping them to sell. And actually at the top of the hour, I have a client call right now where we have to talk to an agency that's selling right now. So good times.
Nice.
I try to condense it. So I know it's like 10 minutes.
That is a great story. And I forgot about dude. I absolutely did forget. I know, you know, you spoke at this mastermind and I loved your story and your background, and you were much more, you gave the full story there that I won't get into detail on, but I did forget about dude though. Dude is great.
Dude is a fun time.
Dude is great. I want to dive more into the stuff that you're doing with agencies specifically, because some of the questions that I have, you kind of touched on a little bit, but I want to dive deeper a little bit. But before then, well, I will invite others like, hey, if you have some questions, anything that pops up that you would like to ask Chris especially, please drop them in the chat, in the message, and we'll get to them. We got our good friend Terry Samuels is here with us this morning. So always good to have Terry around. One of the things, and I have to be honest with you, I was not familiar with it, but I went back and I looked at it, was the Stevie Award. And you are a Stevie Award winner. And dude, look at that. That is nice.
Oh, here's our second place. So when you win the first place, they give you this big trophy.
Okay, nice. That's beautiful.
And then when you get that's the first place one. And then when you get second place, they give you this little, it almost looks like a Alcoholics Anonymous award. Jesus.
It looks like a coaster in a nice little.
I mean, second place, you know, so I don't deserve the trophy, but yeah.
But I really didn't know anything about this Stevie, and this is like this world premier business award that's like 12,000 nominees, and man, and here you like brought it home and won one of these things. I think they give out 9 or something like that. What category did you win it for?
So we won Minority Owned Business of the Year, which is really cool. And I purposely said that the company was in Tijuana, Mexico, just because I was like, there's probably never ever been a company, because you know our outsourcing operation is based in Tijuana. So I was like, there's probably never ever been a company out of Tijuana that's won a Stevie. Let's make some history and put that put Tijuana on the map for something different.
That is
Yeah, so
awesome.
we won Minority Owned Business of the Year, and then we won. So the second place was for Most Innovative Company under 100 employees,
Okay,
which is pretty cool. Yeah.
that is pretty
So
cool.
that was
Well, congrats, man. That is
2021. Yeah, 2021 when we got the award. It was for the work that we did in 2020. And so what was
okay.
cool is like you have different ways that you can apply or that you can apply. So they have like basically a paper application that you can fill out,
Right, right.
but then you can also do a video application. So we did a whole video, probably like 5 minutes, telling our story.
Yeah.
And back in the time, I had a full-time video editor, and so we put together this whole cool video and submitted it, and we won. Pretty neat.
Good for you, man. Congrats.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That really is a big deal. And man,
Yeah, one of my friends, Greg, he's like, "Wait, you won for like the whole country?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You?" I was like, "Yeah, you dick. Like, I fucking won, man. I'm fucking
that's a
awesome."
good friend, right? That's
Yeah.
it.
I've known him for 20 years. 25 years. Jeez.
All right. So now we got Bloom. Oop, I gotta go share this thing. Hold on a second. Let's bring that up. There we are. Bloom. Now we got
Mm-hmm.
Bloom. Well, I'll throw the link on here. People can go do this. Uh, I love so much of the stuff that you're doing, and so questions, and you can just kind of free flow with this stuff when and go with it. But
Sure.
so you're agency focused, and you mentioned a little just a few minutes ago. You kind of see some of the stuff that happens, and I'm wondering, when you see agencies or when they come to you and kind of and begin talking, do you see kind of like a commonality maybe on issues that they're facing
Yeah.
in regards to and you said kind of stall out right on this growth, and that's why I'm wondering like what are some of those common issues and that where you guys have stepped in and like this is where we can help and this is where we kind of push you. That
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
think
Yeah.
it totally makes sense
That's
because
it.
there are common
Yeah.
issues. I mean,
Right.
not everybody is the same, but for the most part, I would say from the owner's perspective, the number one thing that we see is frustration because they've tried everything on earth and they don't know
Yeah.
why things aren't working. It's like, oh man,
Yeah.
I have, the same SOPs that were working before and they're not working now. I have
Yeah.
the same people and, everything was going great. And then all of a sudden it stopped working. So that's a very common theme with our clients. The other thing with the owner is that they are starting to taste success and they're like, man, this could be worth something big one day if only I could get past this hurdle where I'm at today.
Right.
And when I say a million, give a little bit of grace to that because it could be, 700,000, it could be 3 million, right? But that's
Mhm.
typically, if you're in that range, that's kind of where those things start to become apparent.
That's why I was wondering, do you kind of find like as you're talking with folks, like I would imagine, because I always think that there are these kind of natural plateaus when a business is
Yeah.
growing. They kind
Yep.
of are able to like get to here and then they kind of plateau until they do something or fix something and then they crank again and then kind of stall out right to another
It's exactly what
plateau.
happens. It's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
what
So on that initial plateau kind of stall, they scale, boom, they hit that 700,000 to 3 million, whatever that range is. Uh, what are those things then? You said like some of the things just like stopped working. I'm like, why?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've never used this analogy before, so hopefully it works. But if you've ever played sports before
Yeah,
and you have a move that you do that works really, really well on like the freshman team, and then you try and do that move on the varsity team and you just get
yeah,
your freaking cleats blown off,
yeah.
that's kind of like what it's like,
That's
right?
what
So
it's
like
like.
you have to improve uh, in multiple areas in the agency if you want to get to that next level. So let's start with the first one, which is the way that you manage folks. So
Right.
when you're an agency owner and you're new, you're kind of starting out in essentially like startup mode, and you're still trying to figure out like proof of concept, or I'm sorry, product market fit, and everybody's just kind of running around having a good time, right?
Right,
Everybody
right,
has to
right,
wear multiple hats. And it's hard to build out SOPs and have like actual roles on the team when everything is constantly changing and
right.
you're like innovating and learning. And it's super, super fun, but it's chaotic. And then eventually you get past that stage and you're like, okay, cool. Like we've got a working model. Let's see if we can duplicate the success. Now you start to have, like kind of like version 1.5 of your SOPs, a little bit more defined roles, but people are still wearing multiple hats. Then you get past that stage. Then you get to like the most difficult stage, which is what we call the development stage.
Hmm.
And that's where that business is starting to generate revenue. It's not super profitable, but you've got product market fit for sure. And like a big piece of that stage is making sure that you have the right people. This is true of any
Right,
stage
right,
you're
right.
in, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
as you're starting to get more professionalized in the business, you have to have people that in many cases have already done it before. So when you're starting out, you hire people and you're like, I can train them, like we're all on this mission to just get through the early stages and survive. And then you get to a point and unfortunately you realize that some of the people that you have don't have the skill sets to get you to that next level.
Right.
And yet as an owner, because
Yeah,
most
yeah,
agency owners are like nice, good people, you feel an obligation to bring these other people with you
right,
because it's, man, like I couldn't have got here if it wasn't for, Jimmy and Susie. But then over time you recognize like these people just don't have the skills that I need. They don't know.
mhm,
One of the big things that you have to start doing as you're growing is you have to start looking at your numbers, right? And you have to start reporting, like have leadership meetings, like we recommend weekly leadership meetings, and start reporting on the numbers. And some people can't do that. It's
hmm.
just the way that it is. And so if
Some
Jimmy
people
can't,
within the organization or like the top level even.
and at
Yeah,
every stage, there's basically a job that you have to do. So this is
yeah,
something that we say, and it's
yeah,
kind of become popular in the world of business, I should say, is that run your company like it's a sports team, right? So on a sports team, you tell the wide receiver, "Hey, I need you to catch the ball in the end zone." Like, and a really really good organization will say, if you catch the ball in the end zone 10 times by the end of the season, I'm going to give you a bonus of $1 million, right? And so we tell our staff at the agency, I need you to complete X, Y, and Z daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, right? And so then you measure people against those goals. And it's you either can or you can't. So I like you as a person, but if I need you to score 10 touchdowns and you can't do that or you keep dropping the ball, I mean, I'm going to have to let you go and find somebody else who can do that.
right, right,
And so the first part is making sure that you have that clarity on what you need each team member to do and then holding them accountable to that. And if they can't do it, then we have to find somebody who can. And that gets really, really, I mean, that's challenging at any stage in the business. Letting people go sucks, like unless
right,
you're a
right.
psychopath. So, but that's something that an agency owner that's at 1 million or approaching 1 million, they've never really had to have those difficult conversations before.
Hmm.
And what makes it so challenging is because they don't have data and they have to make these decisions based on kind of like a feeling and also they're promoting people based on a
Right,
feeling and not actual facts.
right.
But once you have the data and you have the facts, then guess what? You can make decisions based on facts, not feelings, which just happens to be the title of my book. Facts. So everything in your business, in
Yes,
your agency, should be run on facts, not feelings. And when you do that, you can start making much better decisions,
right.
and all these difficult decisions you have to make become much easier.
I
Are you
got
going to go get my book?
I'm gonna go pull up the link to your
Yeah,
book. Yes. So keep
Facts, Not Feelings on Amazon.
so I yeah, so I'm sorry that I'm not
No, 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 it's okay.
let me go find this for you.
I need a
I've
few more 5-star reviews.
yeah. Uh, Facts Not Feeling, Mastering the Art of Running Your Business. Boom. Bam. Look at that. That's sweet. Uh, there it is. Boom. Go get it, people.
Please,
I'll
yes.
I'll I'll drop this in the chat as well.
Thank you.
Um, how much do you find that Well, there's so much that you just talked about that I'm kind of like, oh man. Well, first of all, let me hit this. I find that sometimes agency owners and are what I would say, I don't want to say accidentally successful, but
Hmm.
maybe they kind of started the business. They're like, hey, I like doing this stuff. I'm kind of a geeky kind of guy or whatever.
Yeah.
And then kind of to your point, like, wow, all of a sudden this thing is kind of growing and we're having some business and things are being successful. And and they were just not really equipped to be like
Oh yeah.
running $1 million business or $3 million business. They're kind of like, oh my gosh. Do you find that some of this stuff is like a I don't want to say at fault because I do think that people have different skill sets and some people are great at kind of ramping up and scaling and getting to that maybe that first plateau,
Hmm.
but maybe they're maybe not the person to like get you to the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
to
Totally.
use your sports analogy. So, do you have those conversations sometimes when you're
100%. a hundred
that?
percent.
I think that would be hard, but
Well, I mean, that's one of the first things that we have to talk about with the owner is the
Mm,
goals, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to have a small business and maybe, few employees but you're still very much
right,
involved in the business.
right, right,
You can totally do that if that's what you want. But let's not be confused that if you say you want a business that you could sell for $10 million plus down the line, and then you say you still want to have all of the fulfillment relying on you, or you still need to be, the creative person that's doing all this work, and you still need to do all these things,
right,
then those things are conflicting. It's like saying, hey, I want to play in the NFL, but I want to eat 5 gallons of ice cream every day, and I never want to go to the gym. Like, that just ain't going to happen. Well, I should say, maybe it will happen. I don't know. Maybe it would happen. But statistically speaking, your chances of hitting that goal are very, very low, right? So let's first get aligned with where you want to go and what it's going to take for you to actually get there.
right.
So we'll have that conversation with our clients. And then, sometimes it's a come to Jesus moment where they're just like, I just don't want to do that,
Mhm.
you know, and that's okay. Like, you can just keep doing what you're doing now,
Right, right,
and just recognize that you're still going to feel those pains. But ultimately, the agency owner has to be willing to evolve into the person that can run a company that's the size that they are looking to get to. And
right,
so that involves reinvention. Like, you have to learn how to lead most of
right,
the time, because
right,
most of us are
right.
accidental agency owners. I never knew that I would have a
I
marketing.
so that was kind of where I was going a little bit with this as well, because sometimes the guys, and I know a lot of agency owners and great people, and and some of these guys are like incredibly technically skilled in what they
Hmm.
do. I mean, their insight and their knowledge base is astonishing sometimes. Um, but at the same time, there's soft skills when you start and listen, agency owners, I love them. All of my best friends are, but maybe they're not necessarily the best leaders. They
Hmm.
certainly don't have HR skills, right? In managing people. And so, when you're beginning to work with these folks, you kind of make some suggestions like, here's some material. Let's go through some leadership training, right?
Yeah, that's one of the
You're,
things that we do, actually.
yeah.
When
Okay.
necessary, we'll provide the leadership training for
Okay.
the agency owner. Um, I mean, I don't know why this might sound controversial to some people, but like, um, some agency owners really need to go to freaking therapy. They need. I, I'm serious. Don't laugh. This is legitimate
Let me just
because
tell you, I completely agree because I think sometimes what holds my company back is probably me as much
it's
as
always
anything.
going to be
So,
you. That's the thing, is get
yeah,
comfortable with that.
yeah,
That you are always going to be the bottleneck, and that
yeah,
bottleneck might
yeah.
be a system or a process in the business. It most likely is going
Don't
to be
want to let
something that's
go.
going on.
That's me. And
Yeah,
sometimes I'm
yeah.
like, I don't want to let go of that. What?
Well, why not? Why not?
Yeah,
If
I
well,
know.
this is the
Right.
thing. If you want this outcome, and these are the steps you have to take, and you
Yes.
can't
Yes.
let go. You can't
Yes.
put down the ice cream. Well, then that's not me. That's on you.
Right.
And I'm
Yes.
not a trained mental health professional.
Right.
And so that's something that's going on with you. What I find with a lot of agency owners,
Therapy
especially
with Chris right here going on.
the, the ones that you mentioned that are super technical and really have a hard time with people,
Yeah.
there's usually something that happened earlier in life that you're hanging on to, like a negative
Yeah.
thing. So maybe
Right.
it was somebody who made fun of you,
Right.
got picked on, maybe parents were abusive and you just don't feel good enough. Um, there's something happening. That's some sort of trauma, which is kind of like
Right.
the word that everybody used. There's some sort of legitimate trauma that's happening that's making you to think like that. And you can't evolve because what you're saying is, I want to change.
Right.
But what's actually happening is you're not doing
Right.
the
Right.
work. Now, naturally, people are going to gravitate towards things that have the path of least resistance or that they enjoy. So
Mm.
reinventing yourself is going to suck, you know. And I'm one of these people. That's why I go to therapy twice a month, because I had a pretty difficult uh, childhood, and not to go into some sob story, but like it was hard. And so for
Mhm.
me to
Mhm.
get to where I want to go, I have to be willing to be vulnerable and start learning these new skills. I'll give you an example. Actually, this one won't take very long. My dad died of cancer 3 days before I turned 27. Right, I was 26 and
Mhm.
362 days.
Mhm. Mhm.
January 10th, 2006, 27. Or no, sorry, January 10th, 2007. He was diagnosed in December, and he died within a month. Right, and so after he died, like that whole month was just insane because he was healthy and then saw this massive decline. And my dad was
Mhm.
young; he was only 59 years old. And then then I'm putting him in the ground a
Mm.
month later,
Wow.
right? And
Oh,
so that was really, really challenging.
yeah, yeah.
And he was the only parent that I had, and so he was the one parent that I could
Mhm.
rely on growing up. And so after that time period, there was all these emotions going through your brain, and anybody who's dealt with grief, nothing can prepare you for the loss of somebody in that manner, right? And if your
Mm.
parents, if you're older and you still have your parents, like
Mm.
that's amazing. When you're a young man and you lose somebody that close to you that fast, your brain can't catch up with what is going on. And
Yeah,
so all those stages of grief and whatever,
yeah,
and my
yeah.
natural thing is that when I get frustrated with something or I'm upset, I go into anger, right? So like I
Mhm.
am a fighter. Like I literally am, I'm a fighter, but like I try and anger my way into the solution, and that's stupid sometimes. Sometimes it'll help me, it'll propel me and motivate me to keep pushing
Right,
when most
right.
people will give up. But in that particular instance, I like destroyed my life. Like I alienated myself from everybody, and then I was broke, and so I'm like this broke, angry guy that nobody wants to be around, and I didn't know what to do.
Super attractive, yeah.
Exactly. I don't know why my friends didn't want to hang out with me. Um, so so then it got to a point where literally like I looked at myself and I was like, it's either suicide or I go get help. And I decided to get help. And it
Good.
was so unbelievably
Yeah, yeah.
terrifying to reach
Mhm.
out and try and get help. But what therapy taught me is basically just different ways to manage these very difficult emotions. Things that I never learned growing up. I grew up in the 80s.
Right,
We're still
right.
very much a, just shut up and get through it.
Yes, yes.
Don't cry. I'll give you something
Yeah.
to cry about. You know,
Rub some dirt on it. Come on, you're good.
exactly.
Both
Now,
good.
to an extent, that's helpful because you are going to have to actually fight through
Yeah,
pain in
yeah.
life. Life is
Gotta have
very
some
freaking,
resilience. Yep.
yeah, life is freaking hard.
Well,
But like there are other ways to deal with adversity. And so the therapy taught me how to do that. It taught me how to
mm,
set
mm,
proper expectations with people and things like that. And so because of that, I became a much better leader and person. I continue to go to therapy now because I'm dealing with stuff all the time. Like crazy
right,
clients trying to do crazy things, and crazy employees doing crazy things, and crazy governments doing crazy things, and like all this stuff that's constantly happening in life,
right.
right? I don't have to try and figure it out on my own. I can go to my therapist and pay him $150 an hour, and he'll help me move the ball down the field little by little. That's the way that I look at it.
Yeah.
So again, it comes back to me. Like I believe this, that I'm in control of my destiny. And even if crappy things happen, I can always control how I'm going to respond to that. And if I don't have the answer, I can go to somebody who's trained that can help me get the answer. All right. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, beautiful, man. I feel, yeah, that's good. Seriously. And I was kind of serious about like going to the couch with Chris here. This is good. But it is so true though about some of the stuff. It's kind of this self-limiting language that we say to ourselves in regards to and whatever it is, right? And I was being quite serious. Often when I look at my business, I recognize that I'm the problem here.
Yeah.
It's and for whatever reasons, and but either it's because I don't want to let go of something, or I think. And when I say let go of something, not necessarily meaning like a task or a process, but it's more of like letting go of control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not like, oh, I really want to be sure that I'm the editor on these press
Yeah.
releases before they go out.
Well,
But it really is just control and
mm,
trusting, right? And so for me, that's probably my, kryptonite is this, the trust and control issue that comes through. And so
yeah, we talk about this exact thing with our clients that are struggling with
I'm
that
sure,
issue
I'm sure
because,
you do. Yeah,
well, it's natural. Okay. So let's
right.
not feel bad about this. Let's first
Right.
understand why. So,
I have to tell you, that's seriously, that's where I am now, and really kind of where I arrived at about a couple of years ago is like, listen, it's not bad. There are a lot of people that are like me, recognize it and take steps to
mm,
move forward. Similar to like what you're like, go see, a therapy. But, I've done some similar kinds of things. I'm like, okay, I can work through this. I'm putting the ice cream away. I'm not eating as much.
good. So, if you are committed to a different outcome, let's say you want to grow the business or whatever,
Yeah.
and you recognize that you do have to change, let's first, like, this is what's happening on the team members' perspective. The team members are usually frustrated, and sometimes they
Mm,
feel like nothing they do will make a difference because they're
mm,
trying to take things off your plate. But then Randy comes back in, is like, no, 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 you didn't do that right. I'll just do it myself, right?
yeah.
And if
Yeah.
this happens enough times,
Yeah.
what do you
Oh,
think those
yeah.
team members think?
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
They just become dejected and be like, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have this very apathetic company culture, unfortunately. And then
Right.
you're complaining that you have to do everything because the team
Yeah.
members aren't doing
Yeah,
anything.
right.
And it's
Shit's
like
not getting done. Yeah.
you've already raised them to believe that like nothing that they do is ever good enough. So I might as well not ever try. Or the good ones will
Right.
leave.
Right. Right.
So what we have to do though is we have to talk to the employees and just help them to understand why you're so paranoid. So here's something that we
Mm,
do with employees. It won't work if you do it yourself, by the way. You have to have somebody else do it. You say, okay, if the business goes under and you have to go find another job or whatever, like what does life look like for you, employee Jimmy, if the business goes under today? And then Jimmy will say, well, it's going to be really inconvenient and I'm going to be worried and like I'll
mm,
have to go find another job and they only think about it from their employee perspective.
right.
And then we'll ask the employee, okay, Jimmy, what happens if the business goes under for Randy? And they're like, I have never, like, I'm not once have I had anybody say that they've thought about this. Like, I've never thought about that. Well, maybe this happens, and I'll be like, what about the clients that like now Randy's
Mm,
reputation is
right.
damaged? What about, bill collectors coming after him because there's contracts that are outstanding? IRS issues, legal issues of clients that say that we paid for things and now you can't even deliver on what I paid for. Like there could be lawsuits that happen. And so the employees start to recognize them like, holy crap. And then we say, okay, Jimmy, so I'm not excusing Randy for being a control freak and always mucking stuff up, but can you kind of understand where he's coming from?
Mm,
And now we're meeting in the middle, right? Like he can kind of Jimmy can finally see what you're dealing with. And
right.
again, not excusing him, not excusing the owner, but now we can understand where each person is coming
Right.
from. And then we will explain
Mm,
that this is the thing is Randy, part of his job is to be paranoid. and to think that everything's breaking, right? That's part of the things that he has to do, is try and poke holes in everything that we're doing. And he's never not going to be paranoid because he has all those things riding on his shoulders.
Right.
But here's your job, is when Randy comes to you and says like, hey, did this go out? Or like, what's going on here? You have to prove to Randy with facts, not feelings, i.e. data, that everything is going according to plan. That's your job. That's the yin and the yang.
Right.
Paranoid, proving everything's going according to plan with facts, not feelings.
Right.
And so we explain that dynamic, and then everybody's like, oh, okay, well, it makes sense. I understand my role. And then we move forward and everything's cool.
Love it. I love it. Back to the book, Facts, Not Feelings.
Well, that book title came from, I was at a conference, or we were hosting a conference in Vegas a couple years ago. And so we were at this conference in Vegas that we were hosting, and I said that term, facts, not feelings, and it just caught on. Everybody was saying it the whole weekend. And then, so I kept it. And then eventually I was like, okay, so I'm going to make this the title of my next book. And
nice. Love it. Well, I want to move. I could talk about kind of your agency intervention for forever. But one of the things that you do as well, and some of the presentation that you did at the mastermind was talking about agency owners that want to exit, right? So so let's kind of fast forward. We've got agencies that know, and owners that know what they want to do, kind of what the end game is, so to speak, what their goal is, and it is to like, hey, I want to cash out at some point, and this is where Chris can kind of step in and help. So and I know, want to be respectful for your time. We got about 10 minutes or so left. If you can, maybe walk through, I don't know, kind of in thinking about an agency owner who is like, yeah, I would like to sell my agency at some point. What are the things that they can prepare for it now, and what they should be focused on, kind of leading up to that?
I'm going to make a very bold statement here, Randy.
Before they call you and say like, Chris,
so every single agency owner, every single business owner, I don't care what stage you're in, needs to be building the business to sell. One day. Build the business to sell, and start from now. It's going to be way easier if you have that end in mind. All of us have heard this, start with the end in mind. Right. It's way easier if you put that into practice now than if you get like 5 years down the road and you were just kind of running the business willy-nilly, like not being disciplined. And then you're like, oh, well, I want to sell the business in a year. And then you have to try and get all this stuff in order, fix 5 years of bad habits. It just ain't going to happen, right? It's way more difficult. And then you're in a really difficult spot. I tie this back to my dad because, he wasn't a great business person. And so after he died, there were a lot of financial problems that we had to clean up. And, not to his fault. He came from immigrant parents. His parents couldn't even read. But, I think if he had recognized how quickly he was going to die, that he probably would have made a bunch of different decisions. And so I know that's kind of like a morbid explanation for your business, but like you need to set your business up so that the worst case scenario, if that happens, die in a car crash or whatever, like it's not going to be a burden on somebody else. So to me, that's a very practical reason to build the business so that it can be sold one day. So with that being said, when you're going to sell the business, your marketing agency, and in today's environment, April 15th, 2025, the first thing that they're going to be looking at and the last thing that they're going to be looking at is the EBITDA. It's not revenue. It's not whatever tech you're using. While that's a factor, the first thing that they're going to look at are the numbers. So you have to have your numbers
EBITDA.
In order.
Explain EBITDA real quick.
Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Right? Yeah. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to give you a very, I majored in sociology, so take that into consideration. I'm just a normal person, okay? That is what's left over before you pay taxes and after you've paid all the expenses in the business, including your own salary.
Right.
Okay? So they're going to look at the EBITDA in the business, and they're going to give you a multiple on that number. It doesn't matter, it does matter what your revenue is, but if your revenue is $15 million a year and your EBITDA is only $1 million, you're only going to get like maybe 3-4 million for the business. That sucks. We've had agency owners come to us in the past and they're doing $2 or $3 million a year, and they get an offer for like $1 million and they're like angry about it. And then I see their numbers and I'm like, this is a very actually like nice offer, because your business is not a healthy business.
Right.
The health of the business, you have to look at the numbers. Almost like if you go get blood tests. I just got some blood tests over the weekend. Like you might look on the outside, you might have this, super ripped, jacked physique or whatever. But if you run a blood test and your cholesterol's through the roof and all of your like enzymes and levels and whatever is terrible, like guess what? You're unhealthy.
Right.
The health of the business, you have to start with the numbers. Do you have healthy profit? Is it a healthy business? So that's the number one thing. The simplest way to get started is just get a bookkeeper. Like if you don't have a bookkeeper, or you're trying to do this all on your own and you don't have the books produced, like by the 10th of every month, you should have the previous month's financials, books completed. Your P&Ls, your bank, balance sheet, cash flow statement, like all that. You have to have that every single month at the 10th. Bookkeepers cost you like $300 a month, $350 a month, right? It's not that expensive. So that's the first thing, is looking at the numbers. The second thing that I would look at, is that a good answer, or did you have any questions?
Love it. Okay. Yeah.
The second thing that I would look at, and it's kind of like a tie between 2 and 3, but the second thing that I would look at is
it's all important.
There's like a bunch of different things, but like I'm trying to like touch on the most important ones.
I know.
The next thing that I would look at is your client retention, right? So like if I'm going to buy an agency, and we're doing this right now, actually the call that I have in 10 minutes is to talk about that. They look at client retention, because the client retention is an indicator of how well your product is working for the clients. So in marketing agencies, right? Basically the clients are giving us money because they want to make more money, right? I don't care what it is that you do.
Right.
If you are in the world of marketing and advertising, ultimately there is a business that wants to pay you a certain amount of cash because they want you to take that cash and multiply it so that it comes back with a lot more friends. And so if your clients are leaving under 2 years, right? If they're not staying you for years, then that means that there's something off in the product. Okay. So I typically like to see monthly churn at 3%. I want to see clients staying with you for 3 years plus. That's what I like to see. If the product is not good, then you got to dive in and fix the product, right? Like I think marketers, because we're good at marketing, we're trying to put lipstick on a pig and just outsell the churn, which is crazy.
Right.
Can you imagine that in any other industry? Right. I just had somebody to help us with a bathroom remodel. Can you imagine that guy comes in, he took out a wall and he starts the project, he's banging on the wall. He's like, well, I got like 70% of that wall out. This is all I can do. Here's the bill.
Yeah.
And then he just leaves. I'd be like, I'd drag his ass back in the bathroom. I'd be like, you better get that freaking hammer out, because you're taking the rest of that wall out of the bathroom. Right? It just doesn't work in other industries. But in our industry, we just kind of say, well, like whatever, we did our best, and I get that to an extent, but you can't just rip people off.
Yeah.
One, it's unethical, but people are paying you for a service. Like you got to give them what you promised that you could give them, right? Or write something into the contract, make it very clear that this is ultimately a test.
Right.
Something. There are ways around this, right? So that's why I put such a huge emphasis on the churn rate, because I want to see the quality of the product. As an industry, we need to improve the quality of our product. We need to help our clients make more money. That's kind of what it comes down to.
And it's critical as well if you're thinking about selling your agency. A buyer is going to want to know, like, well, does this work? Is this
they are going to go through everything. They're going to look at all the expenses for the past 3 years. They're going to look at all of your clients. They're going to look at everything that you're providing to each client, how long they've been with you, what you're charging, what your cost of goods is in each one of those clients. They're going to look at everything, all of your team members, all of the SOPs that you have. they're going to do like a colonoscopy, endoscopy, dental exam, like root
It's lovely.
canal,
A lovely experience. Yeah.
everything. They're going to flip your body inside out, and they're going to look at everything. And you would too. If you were going to pay
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody $10 million
Yes.
plus for a
Yeah.
business, wouldn't you go through everything?
Yeah.
So as an owner, getting back to that, starting with the end in mind, set that stuff up now so that the last minute you aren't scrambling. Terry just asked
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah.
It's a good
Yeah.
question.
Terry's got a good question. Yeah.
So longer term contracts typically can be better. Month to month is okay. What I would like to do, so to answer your question, longer term contracts are better. But if you have month to month, what I would do is I would have a story that says that, like, our average client obviously stays with us for 36 months. So the longer term
Right.
contract doesn't really mean anything. Also have a story that justifies how your client, your lead generation and your conversions, your close rate are much higher because of the month to month, and
Mm.
tell that story. When somebody asks you about that's going to buy your business, it's because they want to know who's locked in and is going to stay after you leave. Because ultimately, like, you're going to stay on for a little bit of time, but then you're going
Right.
to be
Right.
gone. And we want to know how many of these clients are going to bail just because, they were sticking around because Terry was in the business and
Right.
Terry's my
Right.
friend.
Right.
And now
Yeah.
that Terry's gone, I can go off to this other client. So you really do have to sell a story as
Mm.
to why having month-to-month contracts isn't going to hurt you. But in general, having longer-term contracts is better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you say longer term, meaning a year or
A
more?
year. A
A
year.
year? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, listen, I know you got to get rolling. I want to give you a few minutes to prep before your next call. So here's your book, Facts Not Feelings. Go grab it, folks. I think this is pretty good. And then as well, if you have questions, if you're an owner and you're thinking like, yeah, I want to start thinking about selling and a year, 2 years down the road, or want to begin to prep and build your agency to scale further, hey man, reach out to Chris. This guy
Can
is
I
he
can I
is
just
the
say
real
something
thing.
different
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
there, Randy? Because, like saying like, oh, I want to sell one day is one thing. I would say when you are thinking about your business,
Mm,
ask yourself, am I worth it? Am I worth a $10 million exit one day? Do
mm,
I deserve this for all the hard work that I'm putting in? And if that answer is yes, then buy the book or you can reach out to us.
right,
But that's a
right.
big thing, is like, I say that because some owners that I talk to, they actually don't think they're worth it. And that's why
Yeah,
they're not willing to invest the time and energy and the reinvention.
yeah,
But if you think that you're worth it, if you know that, hey, this is something that I deserve one day,
yeah,
let's go.
yeah, yeah.
Let's start that journey today.
That sounds like another therapy session potential. Am I
I,
worth it?
I mean,
Right.
I've spent so much money on therapy. Uh, I've picked up a few things, but no, I am not a licensed professional. Please,
Yeah, you're good. You're good,
whatever
man.
government agency regulates that, please don't
Yeah.
come after me. I'm not a
Well,
therapist.
you're the man. Listen, Chris, thank you so much for jumping on and being
Thank you.
with us today. Absolutely appreciate it. I really enjoy what you bring, and your perspective on the business, I think, is just right on. Just a
Thank you
breath
so
of fresh
much.
air. Folks, I'm not on next week. I am traveling next Tuesday, but the week after, on April 29th, I've got a good friend on, Jesper Neeson is on, and talking about his latest updates on his SaaS tool, Yax. So join me on April 29th. And until then, Chris, man, have a great week, and thanks
Thank
again.
you. Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
buddy. All
Bye.
right. Thank you, folks.